Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Front officers, welcome in. And I guess before we get into any NBA news, we've got our special NCAA March Madness bracket tournament that we've got set up. I'm going to put the link in the description below. Keith, you set this up. Kind of have a little bit of fun with all the front officers out there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, join in, have fun. Whoever wins, or if you finish second to Trevor or I, or third to both of us, what we're gonna do is we're gonna let whoever is the top finisher out of the two of us, you can send us a rant, prediction, whatever it is you
Mhm.
want. Keep it appropriate, and then we will read it on the show and share that as thoughts from you and all that stuff. Just a little fun. Other than that, it's always fun to compete, right? And the tournament's fun, and you have a chance. One bracket per person, and it is a locked group. So once the first games on Thursday, not the first four games, but the first actual field of 64 games Thursday afternoon tip off, the group locks, and you won't be able to like swap in a better performing bracket and all that stuff. So one per person, not 50 entries by one person, with every team in the field as a champ.
And this, so we talk about this during the year, but you and I both during the year pay very little attention to college basketball. We
Yes.
don't have enough time to focus on both
Hmm.
college and the NBA at the same time. There's not enough hours in the day. So that means that for this, I have not even begun to start looking at college basketball. I will very much be picking blind. So just kind of keep that in mind going in here. If you happen to lose to me, you're losing to somebody who's coming in with zero knowledge. It's not like you're losing to a college
I
basketball
love it.
expert here or anything like that. Just want to throw that out there. Should anyone finish behind me in this?
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's good cover. You just basically, covered yourself for if your picks are also horrible.
Exactly. Yep.
I tend to go too far with the New England schools, so that's there's my crutch. But there's only a couple. There's Vermont, Providence, and Bryant, and Bryant is a 16 seed who is in the first four, so they may not even make the main field. And then Providence, we'll see. Providence, coached by one of my former high school teachers, so that's kind of cool. So we'll see. But yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So make sure you guys click the link in the description and come join us. Have a little bit of fun during the March Madness tournament.
Yep.
All right. Let's kick things off with, well, let's go with your hometown Orlando Magic. Keith, Jonathan Isaac out for the season. I guess this isn't completely unexpected given where we are right now. But cap-wise, Bobby Marks was on Twitter and was talking a little bit about this, that the Magic are now only on the hook for a portion of his contract. That should they choose to waive Jonathan Isaac. But that
Correct.
doesn't seem to be the plan here. He's been out for quite a while now. He's going to miss essentially 2 seasons, but the plan is still for him to be a long-term piece for them.
Yeah, they are not going to waive him. I know, people are wondering about that, and well, they could get out of this. They they're they're not in a place where they're looking to use cap space or anything like that, and it's a good chunk of savings, but it's not so much. That is more in line with if he never can return, which is clearly not the case at this point, is then they can take that kind of action here. But yeah, he's owed a good chunk of change. He's owed what is it, 52.2 million for the next 3 seasons. So that's not including this year. That's all fully
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed, no options, nothing like that. So we'll see. They when they re-signed him and Markel Fultz in the same summer, they protected themselves with Fultz's final season is only 2 million guaranteed, and he's now actually made it back and is playing pretty well for the Magic. He had 11 assists the other night. He's actually looked pretty solid. But Isaac, yeah, it's not a surprise given the way this has gone, but it is a surprise that this is going to be 2 full
Mm-hmm.
seasons that he will have missed. And just to kind of catch people up, he got hurt in January of 2020. On actually, I believe it was on New Year's Day. He tore his, I believe it was he tore a meniscus, and then he was thought to be lost for the season. Then he came back in the bubble and
Mm-hmm.
played in that summer after the season paused. And in the second game in the bubble that he played, he then blew out his left knee, the ACL, meniscus, complete tears. And that was what's had him out since. Did not obviously come back last year. not a huge surprise given how late he tore that, in
It was a
August. And
quick
that was,
turnaround.
it's, yeah,
Yeah.
it's usually a full year. But to now miss this entire season too, that means it's going to be 2 full years
Hmm.
for him. Plus, by the time we see him on the court again, it'll be about probably 26, almost 27 months by the time we see him play again for the Magic. And that's tricky because he's going to be
Hmm.
25 a little bit later this year. So let's see what this does for them going forward. And when you're in that position, all you really want to do is get all these young guys on the court together and see how they all fit. And this just becomes a lost season for Isaac and the Magic.
The hope is still going to be that okay, next season at least you get him back out there, and then off you go, and you see
Mm-hmm.
what he can do. But
Yeah.
that said, you got to be disappointed that he hasn't been able to
Yeah.
come back this season. And here's the other thing, and so I've become more and more aware of this season because of Kendrick Nunn. I've seen a lot of fans, and I don't know that Orlando Magic fans are doing it. I'm not specifically saying that I've seen this, but I've seen a lot of fans transfer frustration over the player not being available onto the player themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's typically, I mean, there are some extreme cases out there, right, of guys kind of faking injuries or not faking, but exaggerating injuries. That's the word I'm looking for. But in most cases, the players want to be out there on the floor just as badly as you want to see them out there on the
Yeah.
floor. So I've seen a bunch of Lakers fans angry with Kendrick Nunn. It's not a situation where these guys are saying, oh, I just want to sit around and get paid for it. No, these guys want to play. They're basketball players. They want to be on the court. They want to be competing. Don't transfer frustration over the player not being available to the player themselves. It's not their fault that their recovery is going slow.
No, it isn't. And it's, yeah, I mean, everything that has been said about Isaac is he's working as hard as he
Mm-hmm.
can to try and get back. He's just not there yet. So, yeah, absolutely. It's a tough spot. The other thing too that I'll bring up here, and then we'll
Yeah.
move on from this topic, is a lot of people have asked, where do the Magic go in this draft? Right, the top, they're probably, well, not probably, but they're in line to have a top three pick, and it's for most people, the top three are some order of Chet Holmgren,
Mm-hmm.
Jabari Smith, and Paulo Banchero from Duke. So it becomes, well, they already have Wendell Carter, you have Jonathan Isaac, you have Franz Wagner, those guys. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what is important here is Bamba's not under contract next year. So you've got Carter, you have Isaac, but they're not going to do anything draft wise because of Jonathan Isaac. They're not going to, basically say, well, we got to pass up on another forward
Right.
because we already have Jonathan Isaac because you can't count on anything there. So they'll definitely do what they need to do to move on and get somebody. So if they like one of those big guys, they'll grab them because those guys are all, probably Holmgren's probably a 5 in the NBA, but the other two are probably 4s. Is the way it's shaping up. So yeah, they're not going to let the presence of Isaac on the roster at all influence their draft decision as they shouldn't.
No, you can't. When the guy's been out for 2 years, you can't do that.
Yeah,
You can't.
yeah,
You've got to look forward. You've got to do what you can to protect yourself. And regardless, even if Jonathan Isaac was playing, I'm a big believer of it's talent above all else in the draft. Talent way above fit, particularly when you're at the top of the draft. If there's somebody that you believe is the best player on the board, you take them. Period. Even if you've already got somebody in that position. That's been
exactly.
my approach to the
Yeah,
draft anyway.
yeah, always. Yeah, unless it's an extreme
Yes.
thing like they are both point guards that are 6 feet or under and they can't really play them together, then that's maybe a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Or they both can only play at the 5, then that's maybe a little bit of a different story. But yeah, talent over position fit, 99 times out of 100
Yep.
for me. The other thing, just to close the book on the Magic portion of this, Bowl also will
Yep.
not play this season. He is. They acquired him from the Celtics after the Celtics got him from Denver earlier this year after an aborted trade that was going to send him to Detroit that got voided and sent back. But he's landed with Orlando. They can make him a restricted free agent this summer. I think a lot depends on what happens with Mo Bamba, is the way Orlando structures this entire offseason.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to try to keep Mo Bamba around. They may not go the cap space route. It may choose to then function as an over the cap team. Then you probably keep Bol around and see what you can do with him. Otherwise, you may let him go, or they maybe do one of these deals where they reach a quick agreement
Hmm.
with him. But he's not going to get much past the minimum, coming off again of relatively last year with injury.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a low risk, medium reward type of guy
Yeah,
for Orlando. So
exactly.
let's move on to the Brooklyn Nets, though. There's a fine out there. We'll talk about that in a minute, though. Let's start with this. Steve Nash said he is now extremely hopeful that Ben Simmons will play in the regular season. That's that's a little bit troubling, right? I mean, given that Kyrie
Yeah.
Irving still isn't playing home games, and again, we're going to talk more about him in just a minute, but extremely hopeful. That's not what Nets fans want to hear. Like, for all
Oh.
intents and purposes, he should be relatively healthy. We've heard there's a back issue in terms of ramping things up. He's still rehabbing right now, but he hasn't played all season. So it's not like, oh my gosh, this guy, suffered an injury in January and he's rehabbing a shoulder or something like that. And is he going to make it back in time or something? That's not the situation at all. He hasn't played at all this season. So the expectation was, okay, he'll be ready to go for the Nets relatively soon after the trade. Maybe it'll be a few weeks for him to ramp up or whatever. Now that we're just at the point where we're extremely hopeful that he plays during the regular season, that has to start to cast some doubt on the playoffs, because if you're the Nets, you need time
Mm-hmm.
with Simmons on the floor, with Durant, with Kyrie, in order to develop any kind of chemistry, and chemistry becomes that much more important come playoff time.
Yep. Yeah. So if we just start doing math on stuff, we've only got about 3.5 weeks to go in the regular season. The Nets have 14 games left to play. So that's really tight, right? That is, you're talking, if he's not ready today, he's not going to be ready for a minimum of 7 days, right? So that's, now we're talking 2.5 weeks left. You're going to put him out there. I mean, you really don't want to put him out on the floor to make his debut in the play-in or in the, in a first round
Yeah.
playoff series. So yeah, I think we might be on the tipping point of, we don't see him play at all this season. Let's see, if he doesn't get back within the next, I'm going to call it 10 days, I think the conversation may shift to, hey, we think it's best for him just to sit out and then we'll figure it out. And to be clear, this is now, by all accounts and all reporting, this is a real thing. This is no longer any of the stuff that was going on before. This is, his back is giving him issues every time he ramps up his activity level. Whether it locks up on him, I don't know what it is, but that's what the reports are. So that's why we don't know, and that can always be tough with a back injury, right? He already missed a playoff because of
Yeah.
that, or missed time, I guess, that season because of that. So let's see where this goes. But yeah, if you're the Nets, you got to start to, probably at a minimum, start making plans of, all right, we maybe need to think about not having him at all for the rest of this season.
We don't have an update on him, but between Ben Simmons and Zion, I mean, you're talking about two of the guys that the NBA,
Yeah.
as a league, was looking at. Hey, these are two of our guys that are going to lead us or help lead us into the future. These are two of our future stars here, and potentially we're looking at another playoff series where neither of them is available.
Yeah.
That's not great from just a big picture NBA viewpoint.
No, absolutely not. I mean, that is, if we look at from Simmons draft in 2016 to Zion's draft in 2019, 3 of the 4 guys have missed major time that were drafted #1 overall: Simmons, Markelle Fultz, and Zion Williamson. So just goes to show, anytime you're sitting there saying, we got to have that #1 pick,
There's no
I
guarantee.
mean, yeah, you'd rather have it than not, but be careful what you wish for, because you better get it right.
Oh yeah, and sometimes you can say, well, talent wise, we got it. Like Greg Oden was
Yeah.
great, was amazing,
Yeah.
but injuries just completely derailed it. It turned it into
Yeah.
you got nothing essentially out of that pick.
Yeah.
It happens. Sometimes that's sports. It's the way it goes. But
I mean,
unfortunately,
just let's do this
yeah.
real quick because we're kind of light on topics. But if you go back to
Mm-hmm.
2006, Andrea Bargnani,
Mm-hmm.
Greg Oden, all right, those
Mm,
careers didn't go
no,
great in the NBA. Derrick Rose,
he won an
injury,
MVP,
right? But an
but
injury
sure.
wrecked it. But yeah, but right, an injury hurt him. Blake Griffin, injury hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
For at least a little while. John Wall, injury played career, right? Kyrie Irving's been good. This goofy season
Mhm.
notwithstanding. Then Anthony Davis, good outside of some injury issues. Anthony Bennett, it's not great.
Swing
That
and
whole
miss.
draft
That,
class
yeah,
is
that was a bad one.
not great. But then Andrew Wiggins, probably hasn't lived up to the number one overall status, but he's had a good career. Cat, we're going to talk about him in just a
Mhm.
minute. He's been good. But then we get into Simmons, Fultz, DeAndre Ayton's been pretty good, Zion, and then Anthony Edwards and Cade Cunningham from the last 2 years look really good. So it's a mixed bag drafted number one overall.
There's no guarantees. There's just no
Nope.
guarantees. I mean, and that's sports in general. Sports in general,
Yeah,
you can make the
absolutely.
best signing ever, and 5 minutes in, terrible broken ankle, leg, Gordon Hayward. I mean,
Yeah.
like stuff,
Yep.
things happen in sports. It's the way it goes, but there's just no certainty. No certainty there. But we do need to talk about Kyrie. The Nets were fined now $50,000 for allowing
Yeah.
Kyrie to come into their locker room. The audacity of having a teammate around his team. Kyrie sat courtside during a home game, and that's okay, but not okay for him to play in home games yet. And I think, Keith, we're just at a point where I think we've seen pretty far and wide, even for people that are on the side of get vaccinated, make sure you do all that kind of stuff, wear a mask, all of that. Everybody across the spectrum, it feels like, are now saying this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense to not allow Kyrie to
Yeah.
play in home games at this stage.
What I don't understand is courtside seats are just as close to the
Yeah,
floor as the benches. So as long as I'm on the other side, I can be there and high five my guys and all that stuff, but on their own side of the floor. And I get it. I understand you have to draw a line
sure.
somewhere with your mandate, and the mandate is if you're a performer slash employee, you cannot do your job in a private venue if you're
Mhm.
unvaccinated. But he can go to practice with his team because that's considered a private facility versus the Barclays Center, which is not necessarily considered to be a solely private facility. It's very confusing, and at this point, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And yes, you can say, well, he can solve this
Mhm.
today. He can go get vaccinated tomorrow. Completely agree. I'm not arguing
Sure.
against that, right? He can. He 100% could go do that tomorrow, but that's not where we're at. Where we are at is we're sitting here and we're doing this kind of silliness. And just so everybody knows what's clear is too, this fine from the NBA was because the NBA stipulated basically to block super rich ownership groups from
Yes.
like the Nets from saying, "Hey, we're going to play them. We'll just pay the fines to the
Hmm.
city." The NBA basically has said, "Hey, we're going to start out with fines if you violate any of these local laws, mandates, guidelines, whatever you want. Then we'll escalate to further punishment if we need
Yeah.
to." And that would start to get into probably loss of draft picks, maybe forfeiture of
Right.
games, those kind of things. So that's where the NBA is basically. That's what they got fined for is you violated a local law plus our own health and safety protocols. Not cool. 50K
Hmm.
fine, and we'll see what happens from here. But my guess is that's the end of Kyrie going in the locker room if he goes to any more Nets games as a spectator. He's gonna have an opportunity to go an awful lot of them
Hmm.
because they have a lot of home games the rest of the way.
Yeah. Which, I mean, typically teams would look at and be happy, but this is
Yeah.
actually a detriment to the Nets that they've got so many home games
Yep.
because you don't get Kyrie. Um,
Yep.
Speaking of Karl Anthony Towns, you mentioned him a minute ago. Dropped
Yeah.
60 points on the San
Very good.
Antonio Spurs. That's a number one pick that has worked out. Karl Anthony Towns has been absolutely fantastic. Remember that year for a while, it was Jahlil Okafor, and then there was a shift part of the way through the year, and
Yeah.
then suddenly it was Karl Anthony
Yep.
Towns. The Wolves
Yep.
are certainly glad that they got Karl Anthony Towns in this scenario. And again, dropped 60 points. The guy, he can shoot from anywhere. You know what? I remember coming out of the draft, everybody thought he was going to be this just absolute defensive monster, and that the offensive part of his game was going to take a while to come along.
It's gone
Yeah, it's been
completely the other
it's
way.
been the opposite. But again, but then I think of, okay, Andrew Bogut. It was all about his offense, and the defensive part of his game was going to take a while, and then he became the opposite too. So sometimes we just don't know when you're drafting players
Yeah.
exactly how they're going to develop. But still, 60 points. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. Part of this crop of big men. And perhaps maybe Karl Anthony Towns gets overshadowed a little bit because we focus so much on Jokic versus Embiid, which we saw too. But we focus on those two guys. Karl Anthony Towns is really, really, really good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the Jokic and Embiid stuff too, because they're going to be, we may get some shenanigans, I guess is the best way to call it, where one of the two of them ends up a forward in the All NBA voting, and the other one, gets the center, because they do give them a little bit of leeway with that, not quite as much as they do with the All-Star teams, but quite frankly, that's what cost Jason Tatum a spot on the All-NBA team last year, because his votes got split between forward and guard, and Kyrie Irving had less overall votes than Tatum, but more than Tatum did at the guard position. So that's why Kyrie got the last spot over Tatum. But to go back to that, it is, why this is important kind of for our purposes here. If Towns makes All NBA, he then qualifies for the designated player veteran extension. And that's that, big bump that he can get. It's like 4 years, close to, it's probably going to be up close to 200 million. I've not run the numbers yet, but that's just something to keep in mind here, that we could see him, ink that if he gets locked in. And just the way we're seeing guys are tending to sign the extensions and take the money, he can bump into that next tier or a year early, or a year or two earlier than he could have otherwise. So, so something to keep an eye on there. Hey, I want to go back and close the loop on Kyrie, because I didn't have it up at the time. So they have 14 games left. 9 are at home, and 1 is in New York at the Knicks, which he can also not play in. So you can only play in 4 games the remainder of the regular season. At Orlando, which happens to be tonight, then at Memphis, at Miami, and at Atlanta. Then those are in late March and then early April.
So here's why I reacted to when you said at Orlando. I think you can get a win against Orlando without Kyrie. Now the other 3 that you mentioned, Memphis, and I mean those are teams where you probably need him out there on the floor. So I think that matters too. It's not just what games, it's not just how many games a player misses, it's which games they miss.
No, so that's a great point. So let's do that too, right? So these are the home games he's going to miss. Versus Dallas, tough game. Versus Portland, not so tough. They should win that one. Versus Utah, tough game. Versus Charlotte can be tough, right? The Hornets are probably on par-ish with the Nets, the way they've played this year. Versus Detroit, that's a win you should get. Versus Milwaukee, that's a tough one. Versus Houston, that's a win you should get. And then versus Cleveland, another tough one. And versus Indiana, that's a win you should get to close the season. So that's tough. And let's say you don't get Simmons, 10 out of their final 14 games, you're going to ask an awful lot of Kevin Durant. And then you start wondering, like, so you're going to have a lot left when you get into the play-in and the playoffs, and what does that look like? And then just as a reminder, because it's the way the standings still sit today, they're the 8th seed right now. And I promise I'm not trying to rub salt into the wound, but Toronto won last night after they had lost a game previous. So they stayed ahead of the Nets there. Kyrie would not be able to play in the first play-in game at the Raptors. He would not be able to play in the second play-in game at home in Brooklyn.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to ask you. Looking at the play-in, the Nets are right now only 1 game up on the Hawks. In terms of, from a financial perspective, you want to be at home for at least that first play-in game, right? You want that revenue and all that kind of stuff. For the Nets, if they do drop, that's not the worst thing in the world, because then you get Kyrie at least in the first round of that play. And well, I mean, you should
no, you only get him in the second round. Because if they drop to 9, they host the Hornets.
No, I mean, really drop to 10. So you're only a game.
Drop to 10, so drop to all.
Yeah, you're only a game and a half up on the Hornets, and you're going to be playing those teams. You're going to be playing the Hawks and the Hornets. I know you're going, but your floor, the Wizards, you've got a 5.5 game lead on them. You're not worried about dropping out. I don't know. You probably just play and just win out your games and
Yeah,
don't
you
worry
just
about it.
play and let it fall
But
out because that gets you. I
you
always
you
think
tempt the
I
basketball gods.
that's it. You're telling the basketball gods, all right, you messed around. Guess what? KD rolled an ankle in the last game, and now he can't play, and now you're out,
Hmm.
altogether. But it is interesting. I mean, there's going to be some gamesmanship down the stretch here. My thing is the main thing. They are 4 games behind Cleveland, to get into the sixth
Hmm.
spot. I don't think. I mean, one that's already hard to make up with just 14 games to play. But only having Kyrie in 4 games, I don't I don't think they're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see the Nets in the play-in, and then it becomes, they got to be rooting like heck for Toronto to pass Cleveland, and then they can get, maybe get them on the floor and, in that game
Hmm.
against the Cavs if that's the way that goes down. So just, that's why this stuff basketball wise matters,
Absolutely.
and I don't think things are changing anytime soon. The way the mayor of New York has kind of
Hmm.
dug his heels in a little bit because I don't know if you caught it, but he very clearly said, "Yeah, if Kyrie can play tomorrow if he wants, go get
Right.
vaccinated," and that's where he left it. So that
Hmm.
doesn't sound like to me somebody who's looking to change the rules for a basketball player.
Certainly does not. Does not. All right, we'll go rapid fire through some returns here at the end. We've got Patrick Williams. The Bulls looking at him being back by the end of March, so that's great. That would have him back in time for the
Huge.
playoffs. That's massive for them. But no timeline still for Lonzo Ball. You definitely need to get him back in action. And again, time is running short to get these guys back up to
Mhm.
speed.
Yeah, it's the same story that we talked about before with Ben
Mhm.
Simmons, but yeah, if you can get Patrick Williams back with a couple weeks to go in the season, yeah, get him a little bit of rhythm. But yeah, Lonzo Ball, that's concerning. The dig Alex Caruso back, so that's big. But you want to have Ball back because then you're kind of complete, right? Then you've got everything you want, and that should tighten up what's been a pretty leaky perimeter defense for the
Mhm.
Bulls. I mean, they looked bad last night on defense against the Sacramento
Yeah.
Kings, just kind of got whatever they wanted.
Then we've got Tyreek Evans heading to the G League, the Wisconsin Herd. Remember, he did have a workout with the Milwaukee Bucks, so now he lands in the G League. He gets to try to work his way back into the NBA. We'll see if anything comes of it, but you know what? Hey, good on Tyreek. Hopefully he's able to do it. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
guys do it. Lance Stevenson did it. Isaiah
Yeah.
Thomas, right? I mean, so guys can do this,
Yep.
but he's going to have to play well
Like
at the G League
Stauskas.
level. Yes, Sauce Castillo.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is, if nothing else, he's playing basketball again. Let's hope that's enough. Even if all this does is leads to a summer league invite or a camp invite for next year, then that's where you want to be with Tyreek Evans. You're gonna have to put the work in and earn your way back. But yeah, I mean, he's getting close.
Speaking of comebacks, I saw this the other day. Did you see Delonte West is trying out for the Big Three? How
Yeah,
awesome is
good
that?
for
How
them,
fa-
man.
just
That's so
yeah,
great.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. 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 And I think he made it through whatever. I don't begin to
Hmm.
understand their tryout policies, but I think he made it through the first level of it or something. And now he's on to the next
Great.
round or whatever it is. So yeah. Yeah. It'd be great for him.
Hmm.
That'd be really cool.
We've got CJ McCollum. This is the last thing we'll do. CJ McCollum back from health and safety protocols. That's big. The Pelicans are only a game behind the Lakers. They may get a home game in the first round of the play, and the Lakers are 2-8 in their last 10 and don't look that interested
No.
in competing right now. So we'll see what winds up happening there. We could see a Pelicans home game in the play-in.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be, who would have thought
Right.
that, right? I mean, because we're not all that far back from them being pretty far behind the Kings and the Spurs and the
Hmm.
Blazers too. And now, they move past them. Their win yesterday combined with a Portland loss and Spurs loss, they're starting to create a little bit of distance for that 10th seed there. So yeah, that's definitely what one we'll be watching. I mean, and it's tough too. I mean, we went over it, I think, last show. It's just math with the Lakers, right?
Hmm.
But you lost an opportunity to make up a little ground on the Clippers last night. The Clippers lost earlier in the evening too, and then just didn't. What was that game, like 19-2? It started or something
Oh,
like
it was
that, and
30 to
then
6 at one point, I
yeah,
think. Yeah, they,
and then I know the Lakers then shot the lights out in the middle portion of the game, but and I will say this: it's funny to me now how guys are kind of, they're not afraid to step to LeBron James,
yeah.
right? Like Scotty Barnes was. not in a disrespectful way, like kind of maybe the Grizzlies were
Sure.
earlier this year. But like Barnes was like, I'm gonna get right up in your face on defense. I'm gonna go right at you on
Hmm.
offense. Um, I do kind of wonder if a year from now, if all of a sudden we have maybe some guys who regret the way they were acting while the Lakers are down a little bit, like that could be one of those things where all of a sudden that goes sideways on you from where you wanted it to be. But for now, hey, it is what it is,
Yeah,
right?
it was rough. We're doing live play-by-plays now.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
you and I we can get in it. Maybe you and I can do some playoff stuff or something like that. But it was yeah, they shot, I believe, for the first quarter. I want to say they were at something at the end of the first, like 12% from the field and 0% from three on like 11 attempts or something. Like that was really their shooting percentage at the end of the first. It was rough. It was a rough night, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I saw a lot of stuff people ripping LeBron for the, I don't know what
He
it
was
was, but
upset at an offensive rebound that they gave up.
well, I was more thinking about the one where he had the bad, they gave him the ball
Mhm.
after the game the other
Oh
night,
yeah.
and it's like, yeah, but when anytime you're the first to ever do
Yeah.
something positive in the NBA, that you should celebrate that. Like, I don't, that's not. Yeah, of all the things, I mean, the guy gives you stuff you can rip him for real. Like we
Sure.
don't need to do this. Let's not invent stuff to go after him about. Like keep it to realistic things there. But yeah, I was looking at it too. I saw somebody asked the question of are they gonna shut him down? And
Hmm.
I think we're pretty clearly now the answer is
Yeah.
no, because I think it's this is now, and I don't blame them. You got 14 games left to try to pad those stats, and I do think, because I mean he didn't play the other night, right? I do think when we get to, or did he end up playing? I can't remember, but I know there was a game
He
somewhat recently where he didn't
right.
play, but so yeah, if he wakes up and he's really hurting, then yeah, then he'll probably sit out, but yeah, go get it and let's see. I mean,
He is very much
I don't
pushed
know.
back against the stat padding thing. He said he doesn't care. I mean, of course, that's even if he is, even if
Sure.
that's in his mind, that's going to be his
Oh yeah.
response is no, I'm not doing that. And
No.
he said that any game that he's healthy to play, he wants to be out there on the floor and wants to
Yep.
be, doing what he can
Yeah.
and all of that. When he went for 50 the other night, he made some comments about, I would need to give the fans something for this season, like
Yeah.
some positive stuff going on. So I think there's that in his mind too. Like it's been,
Hmm.
like we've talked about, this has been the most disliked Lakers team ever. Fans do not like this team at all. They want these guys gone. So LeBron's looking at it as, hey, if we have a chance to do something and I can give fans something to cheer for, I gotta do that.
Somebody asked me the other day, do I think they will get to 40 wins or even 500? And this was obviously before last night, but I was like, no, like they were gonna have to go. I want to say before last night, it was like 12-3 or something
Yeah.
to get to 500. And I just looked, they only have 4 home games left,
Hmm.
and they have been awful on the road this
Well,
year.
I've been bad at home
So
too. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, 20-17 is not great, but it's still, I mean, that's still better than the 9-22 they are on the road. But yeah, it's, I mean, and when I say he's chasing stats, he's not doing it in a way where it's like, oh look, LeBron took another 45 footer without passing.
Right.
Like, he's still playing the game the way he's always played it. And I mean, it's go out there and do your thing. I have no issue at all with it. Well, who the hell wants to pay the ticket price? Well, do you really want to go see Wayne Ellington throwing lobs to Dwight Howard? Is that what you signed up for? I don't think so.
He's doing it in the context of, hey, I can kick it to Russ, who's shooting 8% from three since the All Star break. It's not kidding.
Is that a real
That's a real
number?
number.
Oh
Or
my
I can just
god.
attack the basket myself and go. And so we've seen him doing that more, where he's just like he's
That's
going
not.
Thanos style. Like I'll just do it myself and going that way.
Hold on, I'm looking at. Is that
Somebody
real?
I did not vet this myself.
No
Somebody put this out
way.
there on Twitter earlier today, and I'm trying to think. I'm like,
I'm
he has
looking it
not
up.
made many threes recently.
All right, so 225 to 314. No, it's yeah,
Yeah.
8.7%.
So round up 9%.
Holy crap. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll be kind. That's because he only missed one
Hmm.
last
Yeah.
night. Yeah, he's made two 3-pointers out of well, a lot of not made three
Mm-hmm.
pointers. Oh, geez. All right. That's all right. I don't want to pile on, but I mean, just overall, his numbers in the last 10, everything's down.
Uh-huh.
Only 4.4 assists per game. Like, that's weird,
It-
right? Like,
you
that's
know, and
weird to see.
and again, we're
With
up on
two.
Lakers tangent and all that. But look, when we're looking at this team, we're talking about, are they going to win games or not? The energy around this team is different right now than it was even at the
Yeah.
beginning of the season. I think I think there's some truth. There was a rumor that came out a few days ago that that some players within the team were kind of saying like, "Hey, there's only 30 days left," or how they're counting down. I think we
Hmm.
can kind of see that. I'm not saying every single guy has that mentality, but you can kind of get the, "Hey, we're running out the clock here on the season" vibe that's starting to become apparent.
Yeah. I do think you could maybe land in a spot where you get maybe if AD could come
Mm-hmm.
back with a week or so left, give you that little bit of a lift. Maybe you go into the play-in feeling good. But if for some reason he can't get back or things just don't, I mean, this could be one and done in the
Mm-hmm.
play-in. It might be one where it's like, hey, well, what is it? Well, we're 1, 2, 3 Cancun.
Right.
We'll regroup with some of these guys. I was gonna say we'll all get back together in the fall because it's
Most
not
of them
gonna
will
be all
not.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably only a few. It's a as a I don't know if you ever watched Man in the Arena with the Tom Brady thing, but he said each season's tough when it ends because it's never going to be that team
Mm-hmm.
again. Right? There's so much turnover. And I was thinking about that. And I'm like, yeah, this Lakers team's probably going to be like, bye, see you
Oh yeah.
later. Can I pack your stuff
Oh,
for
there's
you?
fans they've got
How
cars ready
quick
to
you
drive
go?
them to the airport and get
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
there's
Yeah. I
that's
am.
been a thing. Speaking of which, we haven't talked about this. Tom Brady unretired, Keith.
Yeah.
What?
Yep. It was funny. So this is just to put it in context. So the Celtics have been off. They played early
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, then they've been off for 2 days, and then they play late tomorrow night, which will be Wednesday night. They play on the West Coast against the Warriors. And I was like, man, by the time they play again, it'll have felt like it was another All Star break. And somebody in my mentions on Twitter said, man, Tom Brady unretired. Or Tom Brady was retired the last time the Celtics played, which is kind of funny. Yeah. Yeah, he dropped it right in the middle of the KG jersey retirement and the NCAA bracket reveal. So
And now
yeah, let it be.
he's trading for one of your players.
Ooh,
It's just said somebody Shaq Mason to the Bucks.
oh, the guard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for a fifth rounder.
yeah. I know. It's I very much with the Patriots. Completely antithesis to my basketball approach, where I have something to say about every transaction. I literally say every time. This is in Bill Belichick. I
Yeah.
trust he knows this stuff way better than I do. I don't even question anything that he ever does. But all right,
Yeah.
I guess they needed a little bit of cap space because yeah, I think I know they were
Yeah.
hurting cap space. I don't understand the football cap where Aaron Rodgers makes $50 million this year, but his base salary is one
Yeah, so
million. Like
I was
it's
thinking about that coming when I'm setting up here today. I was like, this is I was thinking, okay, could Keith and I at some point, like when the NBA is slow and stuff, could we talk other sports and all that? And
no,
I'm like,
no.
like I look at the NFL salary cap and how that works, and I look at like MLB and all that, and I'm like I don't pay, like I don't even fully understand the MLS system. And MLS, they go through great lengths to like hide how
Oh
much
yeah,
players are making and
yep.
stuff like that. It's
Hmm.
so different. The NBA salary cap by its just on itself in itself is complicated enough trying to figure that out. I think this is why you don't see many people that are salary cap across multiple sports. You see guys who are
No.
salary cap NFL, salary cap NBA,
Yeah.
MLB. It's so difficult to get into that kind of stuff for different sport. All the rules they're so specific to that league that it's tough.
Yeah, we have one of our guys, Mike Genetti over at the Spot Track. He is I mean, he's like the busiest guy I know in the world right now because he does a lot of our football and baseball
Mhm.
stuff, and he knows all of it. Now, of course, no salary cap in Major League Baseball, but he's on all of it. And it's like I can't even. I said I sent him a note the other day saying, "Hey, make sure you get a nap in at some point because this is insane right
Well,
now." It's like somebody sent me something where like, "Hey, I think you guys might want to take a look at this for Spot Track," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, we'll look at it in sometime in later this
well,
spring maybe when things slow down in the other two
in
sports."
MLB, it's not even so much cap. It's okay. There's arbitration and there's all this, other
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my
there's a
gosh.
million things going on right now.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. You've got, I mean, and these teams are trying to build their rosters, and it was like the NBA off season, a couple years ago. It was
Warp
like, all right,
speed.
build your roster in like a week, right? Because that's, all there is. And I mean, that's kind of what's going on in baseball right
Yep.
now. But yeah, all right, man, we went way off the
We
rails there.
did. We did. This is why, before, pull back the curtain a little bit, before we started here, I told Keith, we don't have a ton to get through. I'm not even going to guess our time, though, because every time I do, we go way over. And here we
Every
are,
time.
a 40-minute show. Thank you,
Yep.
front officers, for
Well,
hanging in there
enjoy.
through all of
That's
it.
it. Front officers
That's
salute.
right. That's right. Oh, man. The front officer salute. We're taking this to another level. All right, everybody. Appreciate you for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe. Don't forget to turn on notifications and click the link in the description. Come join us. Make your picks for March Madness.
Yeah, let's
Let's do
go.
it.
March Madness. Love
Let's
it.
do it. See ya and stay safe.